Ladies and gentlemen, our program will begin in 2 minutes. Please silence all cell phones, pagers, PDAs, laptops, iPhones, Blackberries, alarm clocks, watches, microwaves, refrigerators, and any other electronic devices that you have. While you're at it, no coughing or sneezing. Don't whisper to your neighbor during the program. Please do not leave this room until the video is over. Now, sit down, shut up, so we can start the program. Thank you.
Folks, may I have your attention, please? I want to go over a few details with you today. Rick, can you check the sound levels? Stanley, are the rows straight? Patty, do we have the flags? Martha, where are the flowers for in front of the podium? Cece, could we get the tables moved to the left just a little? Folks, thank you very much. I appreciate everyone being here today.
So begins each rehearsal for Elon's convocations, performances, commencements, speaker series events, and concerts. The force behind scheduling and conducting all these cultural programs and university celebrations has been Dr. George Troxler, faculty member, administrator, and colleague at Elon for 40 years. Like a marionette's puppeteer, George pulls the strings of our campus gatherings to present an artful performance, exerting quiet leadership while he's in the wings or at the back of the house, observing, critiquing, and making notes for improving the next event. It is through years of nurturing relationships, showing sound judgment, and following through on promises that George has built the tremendous base of support and respect he enjoys at Elon today.
Over the years working with Dr. Troxler, I've paid special attention to his attention to detail in his organization. Oftentimes we're doing numerous events at the same time, and it takes somebody with George's skills to take care of all the different events and the different details that go along with those.
George and Carol Troxler came to Elon College from UNC Chapel Hill in August of 1969 to teach in the history department. With a PhD in American colonial and revolutionary history, George was attracted to Elon because of its teaching and student-based emphasis.
The day that we discovered the possibility of bringing Carol and George Troxler here to teach was an exciting day for me. I was very pleased. These were highly qualified, attractive young people, and I thought I really had hit the jackpot. And I got both of them in one day. It was a great day.
Within 10 years of their arrival at Elon, George and Carol had 2 daughters, Heidi Brown Troxler in 1978 and Lydia Aiden Troxler in 1979, and a dog, Cleo, named for the Greek muse of history. In addition to being a devoted father, George has been involved in the world of scouting, which provided social and leadership outlets for him as an only child growing up in Greensboro. George became a Cub Master for local Pac 51 in 1975, and his work has resulted in leadership positions, recognitions, and awards at the local, regional, and national levels, too many to list.
When George works with the Scouts, he's very similar in approach, in thoroughness, and in care and concern. But obviously, he has a much more playful personality, and he thinks of ways to involve people. I guess that's, what he's always doing when he's staging events here. He's working with so many different groups who have to approach their work in different ways. Well, he can do that just as well and just as fluidly with the Scouts.
In May 2005, George was the 3rd recipient of the Elon's Periclean Award for Civic Engagement and Social Responsibility, publicly noting his scouting accomplishments. During these busy years of teaching, parenting, volunteering, and scouting, George was often called on to apply his academic and organizational skills to campus events. In 1975, he headed Elon's bicentennial celebration, And 3 times over 30 years, he competently chaired very successful SACS accreditation reports and visits, involving over 100 faculty members in researching and drafting responses.
George was selected because he was interested, faculty member. He had the respect of all those involved. And he has been selected every time thereafter because of, 1, he's got a great expertise in it, and 2 is he has everybody's respect, and you know it's going to flow along without any kind of problems.
I had no doubt but what George and Carol would be good teachers. I had no problem with that. What I did not know was the major contribution that George would be able to make in his work with the cultural programs. I told Fred Young yesterday that either he was very smart and had good judgment, or that he was very lucky that he decided to give that assignment to George.
Some of the things that stand out in my mind about his legacy to the institution have to do with his ability to work collaboratively with people at the institution and to respect their desires to see cultural programming connected to the academic mission of the institution. And I think that's really what we have now, is we have a cultural program that in many ways is an extension of the educational mission of the institution. It's a central element of that.
Among others, George brought us Archbishop Desmond Tutu, former presidents Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, and George Bush, primatologist Jane Goodall, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and author David Halberstam, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, former Pakistani Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto, Secretaries of State Colin Powell and Madeleine Albright, Walter Cronkite, Queen Noor of Jordan. The list is long, and the impact of each of these speakers continues to reside in the hearts and minds of faculty, staff, and students who heard them. In 1994, George once again responded to the needs of Elon and added the responsibility for commencement to his repertoire. If ever an event called for George's skills in planning and attention to detail, this was it.
George, during the week of graduation, is like a general, and he commands and leads, and it'll be a real different event next year with graduation without having George at the helm.
If George Troxler asks me to do something, I will do it, because I know that it will be well organized, it will be done correctly, and he will not waste our time with it. And I've learned from him that it's easier to pull a rope than it is to push a rope. And he was very articulate, he was very specific with his instructions. And again, we do what George says do, and it works just fine.
As a scientist who thinks he pays good attention to detail, George has overwhelmed me with his attention to detail. Everything planned to the minute. He never missed a cue on anything.
After 40 years as our campus marionette, George will now hand over the strings to someone else, and for a year he will spend his days tucked in Belk Library, writing a history of Elon College and Elon University, a history he helped to write and remembers well.
I know how much time he's already put into that project, gathering information from alumni and friends of the institution, and I hope that that's an opportunity for him to develop a project that he's been dreaming about for a long time, and I know we will all benefit from that.
He'll have very little to say about himself. But let me tell you, behind every one of those pages and a lot of those successes is the work of George and a lot of other George Troxlers at the institution.
And as he leaves this all-important position, his colleagues reflect on their images and impressions of George and their wishes for him.
The one thing that George says frequently when we're getting ready for something is he'll ask, "Are we cool?" And I think I'd like to inscribe that on the back of my name tag, so that as I continue to do events, that as I put my name tag on, I'm going to always remember and always note that George is in the wings.
George had the opportunity with several of his colleagues to have an experience on an aircraft carrier out in the Atlantic somewhere. And when we got back, Mary or his colleagues made a great shot of George standing on the aircraft carrier directing a plane as it was taking off. And it gives me that vision of George directing everything on this campus. I mean, can't you guys vision George on that deck with his helmet on and his outfit on doing this? That's my fun thing about George, because that reflects what he's done for cultural programs and what he's done for graduations and all the convocations.
He is really looking forward to the writing, I know that. And I hope all of that goes well, ideally, to be in or near the library so he can use the resources and so forth. And I think just little things about just going for a long lunchtime with Carol or something like that would be something that he would look forward to.
George has had tremendous impact. He's a Southern gentleman. He is appreciative of work that is done. He believes in Elon. He's writing the history of Elon. He and Carol both have been assets to this community. They've been here for a long time. And in his writings, oftentimes when we leave the facility, we're forgotten. But I think that with his writings and his book, I think his memory will stay for a long, long time.
Thank you, George. You make our events begin on time. You build in the perfect amount of pageantry and pomp. You help us look backward in reflection and forward with anticipation through scheduling inspiring speakers and events. While you have never invited praise for your efforts, we all recognize your strong leadership and your solid friendship, found in the wings and at the back of the auditorium.
Folks, that went very well. Now I'd like to have a meeting next Wednesday with everyone who was involved in putting this together, so we can get feedback and review possible changes for next time. Thanks again, everybody.